Okay. Well, I'll officially call the meeting to order. It's definitely weird being virtual while everyone else is there in person, but I'll do my best to try to chair the meeting this way. But the first order of business is public comment on items not on the agenda. Do we have any public commenters that are not specific to agenda items?
We do not.
Okay. Sounds good. Next item on the agenda then is the approval of minutes. Do we have any edits or changes to the minutes that Alex had sent out? Nope, I did not see anything to change in the minutes. Do I have a motion to accept the minutes or approve?
I can make a motion to accept the minutes.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thanks. Any objection to approving the minutes? Okay, it passes unanimously. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the Goodwill site plan. And I will say for this, I know we have 45 minutes allocated in the agenda. I would like to reserve most of that time for discussion and any questions that the commissioners have. So if the applicant and county staff could be as concise and brief in their remarks as possible, that would be helpful.
Do I have to mute or anything?
Kellen, the audio sounds fine, right?
Yep, you guys sound good.
Awesome.
Thanks. Thanks everyone for having us tonight. I'm Josh Childs with Affordable Homes and Communities. I'm our development manager on the development of 10 South Cleveland Road. I want to start off by just talking about the partnership that we have here today with Paul Bernard, Catherine Malloy, and Jeff Cole, representing HC Senior Leadership and Senior Leadership Goodwill of Greater Washington. Affordable housing is a tough thing to make reality, and partnerships are so key. And so I want to uplift the mission-aligned partnership that we have together. An AHC partnership is so critical to what we do, especially in how we provide resident services and kind of what we call service-enriched housing for our residents. Housing is fantastic, but it really takes partnerships, intentionality, and cooperation with folks that do more than what we just do in our wheelhouse. Goodwill is a really special organization that I'm sure everyone has interacted with as well. And I think it's a really beautiful partnership where two organizations that care and have both been in the Arlington community for decades come together to build and strengthen communities in kind of our own unique but also shared ways. I'm going to start with the highlights and also to try to keep it brief. What our redevelopment achieves is the addition of 128 new high-quality affordable homes. We have 94 family-size units between 2 and 3 bedrooms as well. We are building an on-site childcare center that will be affordable and have priority for our residents and employees. This is a really important enhancement and modernization of the existing Goodwill site to create a safer, more controlled experience, not just for their donors, shoppers, but also for the people who work there to make their mission alive. And I'll also just highlight that as best we know, this is the first proposal where a Goodwill and an affordable housing nonprofit come together to co-locate the housing and retail in the same site. So we're excited for the precedent. Mixed-use development is incredible as our region continues to densify. Many folks are probably familiar with the site, so I won't go on about it. We are at the the intersection of South Glebe Road and Arlington Boulevard. This is what the site looks from the surface, and then our redevelopment plan. Oops, one slide got missed. I have a nice rendering that's coming up later, but the redevelopment plan will transform a surface sort of dominated, obviously single-use site that there is now, to a site that has a more controlled, safer donation experience for Goodwill's donors, with 5 stories of housing over top of a Goodwill retail facility and a larger processing center. A really important part of this site is that Goodwill is roughly doubling the square footage that they have today, to help their operations and to grow the way that they serve in this location. Our typical residential floor plan, I said we have 5 of these floors. This one highlights a bump out that's a special feature of our top level of housing. It's a constrained site, as you all can see. We don't have a ton of green space to work with, but one of our solutions that we worked with our resident services team to develop and continue to refine is an elevated top floor community room that will be kind of the heart of a lot of our resident services programming. We'll have a balcony, so folks will have more fresh air access. And we have our unit mix here. All 128 units are community affordable by zoning. And the color designation you see is because this will be a mixed financing 9 and 4% tax credit redevelopment. Some of our resident amenity highlights. We have a community room with patio that I mentioned. It was really important for us to find a space where residents could get more fresh air. We do have direct access to this new segment of Arlington Boulevard mixed-use trail that we will be sort of the first movers to help implement the county's plan in this area. And we have direct connection to the building, which is really important. There will be a lounge, a fitness center, free residential Wi-Fi. COVID especially, I think, demonstrated how important Wi-Fi is more of a utility than an amenity. So that's been a focus that we've had in all of our new sites and working backwards retroactively in our existing portfolio. We have a budget and we'll have on-site resident services that'll be on the site to work with our residents, work with property management office on site, and to work with our partners who will be operating their center below us. Like I said, we'll have on-site childcare. We're really excited to partner with Northern Virginia Family Services here to offer a mix of their Head Start programming that's really essential, but they also do subsidize and kind of mixed models that will help us serve the families we'll have on the site. We'll have folks up to 60% area median income. The Head Start guidelines are tied to the federal poverty level, which isn't really compatible with how tax credit income mixes work. So we're working on sort of mixed models to make sure that essentially everyone who lives on the site and the vast majority of Goodwill employees who work on the site will be able to have access to this childcare with our partner. This will also be 100% universal design, which is an important accessibility standard that Virginia Housing sets. This image highlights a couple of the amenities and key features of the site. This is as you're exiting Arlington Boulevard. The child care center, you can see the play area in the back protected by this gentle serpentine wall that helps us keep the grade gentle as you move from this higher part on site to the second building entrance that connects to this area. And I want to conclude by talking about mixed-use harmonies. I think mixed-use development is really important, and there are so many obvious examples. The benefits of putting housing on childcare facilities, obviously, putting housing on top of libraries, on top of grocery stores. And I think that our site is really unique in that way, in this way that our residents, as well as the employees at Goodwill, will benefit together. Employment and housing opportunities, I can see this in the future going both ways, where Goodwill has a mission to serve folks who may have barriers to employment. AHC serves a lot of folks who experience a lot of similar life events and have a really kind of similar background to folks that Goodwill really specializes in employing. I love the idea that employee first, housing second, or vice versa, housing first, becoming an employee on the site is something that 10 years from now we'll look back and we'll see that we'll have achieved. The child care center is really critical as well as a barrier to employment. To have it for the Goodwill residents to be working with a partner where we're going to get the affordability mix is great. Co-location of all of these things in the same large facility on a tough site is also really important. And with that, do you have something you're going to next? Or?
So I don't think there's any staff presentation that needs to be made. I'll just keep it short and reiterate the affordable housing program. It is 128 committed affordable units between 30 and 60% AMI. They're conditioned right now for a minimum of 30 years, but as was asked last night at the Planning Commission, it is something looking to be recapitalized upon and be there for longer than that as well. The other point I just wanted to make was the revitalization resolution, which you all don't see a lot come through here, but that is just a piece of the low-income housing tax credit application process to get points that way. So that's it for presentations, and there are 2 public speakers, Kellen.
Sounds good. Let's go ahead with the first public speaker then.
Okay, give me 1 sec.
Oh, sorry. Good evening. Should I go now? Or?
Yes. So the first speaker is John Musso.
Oh, yes. Good evening, everyone. I'm John Musso, Government Affairs Manager at the Arlington Chamber of Commerce, and I just want to briefly express the Chamber's strong support for the proposed site plan and overall Goodwill project. As kind of demonstrated in the presentation, we believe that this is a very strong project that not only suits Goodwill's ongoing operational needs, but significantly advances the goals based in the Affordable Housing Master Plan, the creation of 128 new committed affordable units, of which 94 are family size, is a significant positive step in the direction of advancing the objectives and goals of the Affordable Housing Master Plan. In addition, we're also extremely pleased by the addition of the proposed child care center that's up to 40 children. But regarding housing, we believe this is a very strong proposal that would generate much needed affordable housing units, specifically at family sizes, for this region of Arlington and for the community as a whole. So we urge you all to recommend this project. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. Alice, you're up next.
Good evening. Alice Hogan with the Alliance for Housing Solutions and Navajo, Northern Virginia Affordable Housing Alliance. Good evening. We are also in great support of this project. We feel like it's innovative. It's a great partnership between 2 mission-driven organizations. As you've heard this evening, 128 new units is just an amazing addition to our county portfolio, and we really appreciate that there are 30% unit and 50% units in this building, because we have folks far below 60 these days that are really struggling to find housing. So that's an amazing component, along with family-sized units, which we are always in desperate need of. Other features that we wanted to lift up include, the green building. It's really going to be, I think it's gold. It's reached a gold level, so that's amazing. Of course, the childcare is fantastic. I mean, to think that we could have affordable childcare in the building where employees and residents can take on-site advantage of that We have the Cadence property just across Arlington Boulevard, the Buckingham neighborhood. I can only imagine that those 30 or 40 slots will be filled very quickly. So that is an amazing on-site amenity. And of course, having the Goodwill there. This is an opportunity for low-income people to have a job training, possible jobs right on site. If not, at least, you know, we all benefit from an affordable retail experience there. So they'll be larger and better opportunities there. The resident experience with the features in the building, the play area, the transit-rich location of this property is excellent. Folks who do not own a car will have many opportunities to get places for their work and other needs. So we thank you, AHC and Goodwill, for your innovation and your partnership. And the only question I did have was, it came up last evening about the affordability period. And I know you don't have your funding secured yet, but could you speak possibly to what your plans are that way? And again, thank you so much for bringing forth this project.
Thank you, Alice. Appreciate the public comment. And so that's the last of the public comment on this topic, Alex?
Yep.
Okay. I just want to echo the comments from both the public commenters about the project. I think it is a great project. And I think this is the first site plan affordable housing development project that we've had from AHC since the Serrano sort of came to a head a couple years ago. So I'm excited the work that AHC has done since then to, you know, improve conditions and just work on meeting the expectations of the community. So I'm very excited for this project and what they can do here, in addition to the partnership with Goodwill. I think the mix of the 30%, 50%, 60% units is fantastic, in addition to the family size ones. I think we received a good amount of written public comments prior to this. I think the vast majority were very positive and supportive. There were a couple questions that were raised, I think, from both the Pedestrian Affairs Commission as well as the Planning Commission around like pedestrian safety and the sort of loop, the driving loop. So I was hoping you could talk a little bit about that and to ensure that the residents and anyone using the site has safe walkability. And then I also want to echo Alice's questions about the 30-year affordability period. I know it says it's a minimum of 30 years, but I'm curious why that isn't set higher, especially given you know, AHC is a nonprofit affordable housing developer. This is what they do. So you would think that would start off a bit longer than 30 years. So those are my two initial questions.
Yeah, on the commitment period, I think it was important just to clarify what the ink on paper says that we are absolutely committed to. The standard county condition says 30 years, and we didn't ask to amend that. Virginia Housing will eventually someday, when we in tax credits, we have AHIF when ANOFA comes back. Those are also mechanisms that on paper absolutely commit, but we have no intentions for it to not be. But I think it was important to specify that, you know, on paper the commitment is minimum of 30. The intention is perpetuity.
Appreciate that. And then about the pedestrian safety.
Yeah, can I put more graphics?
Yes.
I will say high level, for at least the last 3 months, we've worked every week with planning staff, especially Rob Gibson, on these safety issues that we Okay, so it's a complicated site plan. I'm sure most people have seen it by now. And mixed-use site has a lot of opportunities and potential challenges that we've done a lot of work to mitigate. Right. Oh, on your screen, got it. Okay. We have worked with staff weekly for the last 3 months and ongoing since we submitted this application on many productive areas, including creating direct access to the Arlington Boulevard Trail, which you can kind of see my cursor. It's on this north edge of the site where the off-ramp to Route 50 is. It was really important for us to add, we already had a residential entrance here. It's kind of a Virginia housing quirk of you need 2 entrances if you're doing mixed financing. With that opportunity and the enhancements that we made on the trail was an obvious spot to make a direct connection to this space. The most talked about space on the site is this crosswalk here that connects one of the main entrances to this corner of Glebe Road. We've worked with staff. We are proud and grateful to have their recommendation for approval on this and have collaborated with them intensely on making modifications, improvements, tweaks where we can. It will be a raised cross table. This kind of indicates a different color, but there will be materiality, stamping and color that designates pedestrian priority versus vehicular spaces. Another important change that I would say we made through the process is at the very beginning, the site looked like this. We submitted our application, I don't know, maybe 2 weeks before the staff report went public on what the Arlington Boulevard Trail Plan was, which was news to us, but something that we accommodated and we're proud of it. We also started with a lot more what we called surface teaser parking. And as you see here, it was sort of intended that there might be 2-way crossings across, honestly, it wasn't even designated. This was the crosswalk in this rendering. We didn't even show it. Some of the main changes that we made included the elimination of nearly every surface space. We used that to our advantage for our stormwater management needs and the natural plantings and to enhance the public realm on that side of South Glebe Road. But also by shifting the spaces that are priorities for accessibility folks to diagonal, it was a design choice that compels a one-way observance of this loop that we've created. So with staff, we worked and we eliminated basically the conflict where there will only ever be one-way traffic crossing this intersection. I think it's important to note this is the traffic pattern that Goodwill's donors are used to making now. Goodwill is here to talk, and you're welcome, Catherine or Jeff, to jump in if you want, but Goodwill's donor and shopper population are actually pretty distinct. And so by separating the donation loop, preserving the pattern that folks are familiar with, there won't be a lot of re-education on how to interact with the site for those folks. For residents and shoppers, even easier, you continue straight into the site and go to the below grade parking that we have below the building. So we've made tweaks, we've made enhancements. The most recent one, staff recommended and we accepted the idea that this is a 10-foot clear sidewalk all the way through, so it doesn't start narrower and get wider. The crossing table itself is wider. And yeah, we've continued to tweak and refine kind of up till the 1 p.m. call we were on this afternoon, Jeff. So it's been a priority.
Thank you for that additional information. Other questions, comments from commissioners? And I can only see one half of the room right now, I think because the presentation is up. So if you're on the site, that mic is not on, I can't see you.
I have a quick question. This is Elizabeth. What is I think this is great. I just want to start off by saying that I frequent that area a lot and can definitely see how this would be an improvement. And obviously the childcare component is awesome. What is the impact for the businesses that are on that strip, if any? Has that been discussed? Like, do you foresee like negative impact around them with all the construction, or like, have you heard any feedback on that?
Catherine maybe could speak to the
I don't think that there will be minimum impact because they can enter that strip center, and that part will not be under construction. And the other thing is that there's an easement between the strip center and actually where the construction is happening. So that easement is going to cause a natural barrier for those shops there. And we also have a very strong relationship with Carruthers, who own that part of it. And so they've been, I will say, we've had several meetings with them, talked to them, they know about it. And so I think that it is one that we're trying to be good neighbors, because we'll be good neighbors after the construction. But I also think there's a naturalness to it and to the location that will separate the strip part of that center there with what the construction is that we'll be doing.
Yeah, and there are standard conditions for being a courteous construction neighbor while that happens as well. The bus stop will not go out of service while we're under construction. That'll be one of the first things that we configure to make sure that the bus stop stays active through the construction period. And the contractor will have a lot of the standard policies in place to minimize any impact off our own site.
Quick question. This is looks like an amazing project. I'm super excited about all the affordable units. Just question, this being the first AHC project since the Serrano, and knowing all the, the problems that happened with Serrano that I know you all have been addressing, will there be some sort of tenants association that will be able to kind of speak up for any concerns they're having about the building?
Let's talk to resident services first, and then we can.
Sure. Our resident services team are the advocates for our residents as well. There will be an on-site person in all of our new construction developments where we have, I would say, the most opportunity. We have funded resident services above the line to make sure that that's part of our programming. I think of our resident advocates as well. On a mixed-use site, there's retail and there's housing, and our resident services team will be our biggest kind of frontline workers to negotiate as inevitably some of our plans go astray and residents or retail rubs one or the other.
Sure. Paul Bernard, President and CEO of AHC. We've been working very hard to try to restore trust, and it just takes time. We've come to before this body before to say the things that we're going to do, and hopefully you've seen the proof in that. We have been reaching out, having conversations with the advocate community on a regular basis, maybe every other month. And now it's going to be a little bit, maybe quarterly, because I think we've worked through a number of the issues. There's some structural things that we're doing as well in terms of resident services. Our community sort of outreach portion of resident services. We've started the Residents Ambassadors program, and I fully see us incorporating Goodwill and any other sites into that Residents Ambassadors program, which does a couple of things. There's sort of the normal resident services, but I think the Resident Ambassadors program begins to give voice to residents, because we think that that's going to be important. Did I answer?
Yeah, thank you.
And I'm assuming that this is new construction, so it's complete demo.
That's right. Yeah.
But how long is that?
The construction period in total. I will get back to you. The last I remembered was 24 months.
Do you have an estimated start date?
Best case scenario, if financing is all in place, we would break ground next summer.
I have a couple questions. Go ahead, Doris.
Thank you. I just wondered, in this new development, how many fully accessible Type A units there might be, and are they among the units that are in the family-sized units? And then I also wanted to ask, because of some issues related to accessibility, operation of elevators and such at the Serrano, will there be policies in place that will, number one, spell out maintenance of accessible features like elevators and, how long it will take them to get back into operation and such? And then whether there will be a specific policies on requesting accommodations, things like parking spaces that are accessible and reserved parking spaces and other accommodations that tenants might need. For example, things like getting alternative formats of leases and other policies, as well as payment and to the degree there are community meetings, access to interpreters and such. So I was curious whether those would be in place. And then is the child care center is for public, right? For the public as well as residents. So is that intended to be a source of income for preservation of and operation of the housing?
I can take a few of those and haul around if you guys have other thoughts. We will have 14 of the full ADA units. I do not have the number in front of me of the exact mix, but when we assign and you have a ratio of your units that you want to hit, we proportionally it's split between the efficiencies 1, 2s, and 3s. So I can get back to you on the exact that we specified, but 14 is the total number. Language services, yes, our resident services team works really hard. We have a lot of folks who English is not their first language or even primary language, and we do have translated versions of a lot of our material, and we definitely work one-on-one with folks like that. When we have resident services on site like we will at this community, one of the most important things we do at the beginning is like a resident census and profile to really determine sort of like where is the need in areas like that. So yes, there are 2 levels of garage parking underneath the building. There are ADA spaces and accessible spaces for residents only. The residential floors are also served by 2 elevator. There's a freight elevator in the center, really for move in, move out, but there are 2 elevator bays on either end of the building. The building is roughly 300 feet long if you walked in a straight line from the very last unit to very last unit. So the furthest anyone from the center of the building would walk to an elevator is maybe 150, 125 feet.
Josh, can I also add one thing? And I so value the questions that are being asked about people with differing abilities, because that's who Goodwill walks beside. That's part of our mission. And so the spaces that are actually in front of the building were ones that I will say were under discussion quite a bit. But those are for people with differing abilities, who I will tell you, there are many who do not wish to go into a garage. And so from that parking to the parking that's in the garage to, as Josh has gone ahead and spoken about, that is, I will say Goodwill and AHC have been uber focused on how we are serving all people, and especially people with differing abilities. The other thing I'd like just to make a statement, because if I don't, I would be remiss in doing this. We obviously were not partners with AHC when the Serrano thing happened. And when we were going through our process of who we were going to pick as a partner, we did a little bit of deep dive as to what was, what had happened and what they were doing to correct it. I have to tell you, these are two nonprofits that have come together, and I say it like this, excuse me, because you've heard this before, but, it's like when you date, everything is great when you're dating. And then you go ahead and you get married, and it's kind of like, oh, did you really? We really like that. Well, we are now married, and I will tell you, the project, I sit in meetings, and I am amazed at the collaboration, the deliberateness, the discipline that AHC has been with us through this process. We're not in the affordable housing business, as you can imagine, so we really needed to pick a strong partner who, in fact, could do what we're trying to do. The other thing that I think, and it's one of those, oh my gosh, in Gone with the Wind, Scarlett O'Hara says at the end, as God is my witness. Well, can I tell you, as God is my witness, Goodwill has got a brand name that we protect and that we are responsible for. And so having that place is Goodwill. And what goes on in the store is our responsibility, and what goes on above will be our responsibility with our partners. And so I think when you're looking at, and you questioning, Katie, I appreciate the question, understand the question, but I also think it's very important that the county understands that these are, it's not just one of us, it's not just Goodwill, and it's not just AHC, it's both of us together. And we have a responsibility to our own brands, first and foremost, to each other's brands, because we're going to be sharing the site, and then to Arlington County. And so I've never said that before, but as I hear, the questions that are being asked, I just think it's really important that you all understand the position that Goodwill is taking. And it is our land, and it is our property. And so there's a passion that we maintain who we have been now and who we will be in the future. So excuse me for interrupting, but I just had to say that.
Thank you for that, Mike.
Yeah, I had a couple questions. Before I did, I wanted to just acknowledge the representation from the Chamber of Commerce. Thank you so much for being here this evening. We often don't hear from the Chamber on affordable housing projects, so just wanted to recognize and celebrate that. Secondly, Mr. Bernard, thank you for being here this evening, and also congratulations on what sounds like a new vision and a new direction for AHC. I'm really proud to kind of hear the comments that have been shared tonight. Just a couple of small questions, and I hope that they don't offend anyone, but one particular, but the noise on Arlington Boulevard, will that be studied as far as like noise dampening walls, windows, or the impact just on quality of life?
Yes.
Okay, great. The second thing, I know we're housing, but I had some concerns just on traffic calming on the exit to, I think, Glebe Road. I'm not sure that those exiting off of Arlington Boulevard and coming around that right, if someone is exiting out of the property, I don't know, it just seems like it's going to be collision prone. I'll leave that to transportation, but it might be something you want to look into. And then particularly in the immediate entrance of the building, considering there's going to be so many young people that are going to want to run around, and I appreciate that barrier for sure, but just think really creatively on just having a lot of young people in a little small area, and what the impact might be of that traffic coming on. And then lastly, I hate to be the Debbie Downer, but the design, to be honest, I think that you might be able to go back and maybe just reimagine the design. When I think about some of the projects that we often see before the commission, they're very like future focused and oriented. They kind of look like modern and contemporary. And I'm not sure, maybe it's just the rendering, but it kind of looked like an affordable housing project, and not something that was like modern and contemporary. So I don't know if work can be done or if it's just a rendering, but just some feedback. Thank you.
I have a question. Can you go back to the slide of the rendering?
Yeah.
The overview, the top?
Oh, the site plan.
Yeah.
So that area right there, is that two separate buildings or the cars can just go to the underpass? How's that?
Section.
It's a covered donation site.
Oh, okay.
It's a covered donation site, plus it's where a child
But
drop-off
it's
center
separate.
is. Totally
Okay.
separate, yes, there's a
Gotcha.
totally separate.
There's
But
a wall.
for those of you all who donate to us now, and when it's raining, first of all, our poor team members are out in the rain. They will love this site because it will be covered. But also, you will not ever need to get out of your car. It's under pass-through, exactly. And donation attendants will come to your car, pick it up. And it's 2 lanes, so it will move even quicker than it does now. And so it's a very efficient way. And then there is a barrier between that donation drop-off site and then where the children will be dropped off.
Yeah, and I'll just add a couple more things. We call it the AHC side and the Goodwill side, but the side closest to the residential will be open, will be lit, but in order to preserve this one-way route to eliminate the two-way potential conflict over that front crosswalk, the AHC side will be an open pass-through. We're planning, there's a lot of pickup and drop-off that happens, a lot of deliveries in apartment buildings. I live in one, and I cannot believe the number of times a day that different Amazon drivers come now. But it's not like one delivery; it's all the time they're in these vans. So this is also an important area for us to get some of that activity toward the back of house, where every resident will still have access, like through elevators, all the way down to the garage, up and down, and then in childcare for pickup and drop off. We expect many of the slots to be filled just based on what our unit mix will look like. We expect we'll have a lot of families. For folks who are coming from off-site, as someone mentioned, the Cadence from Wesley, they are just down this sidewalk. There's a Capital Bike Share station and a little tunnel underneath Arlington Boulevard. They could even walk to the site without actually crossing traffic. And then, this is not the urban core of Arlington. So for those who would be driving, we also have a safe, controlled, wide spot for families to drop off. I want to also talk about the safety. So Arlington County cares a lot about this section as well. It is a VDOT road, which means more to people in transportation than it does to me, other than it seems like our options are somewhat limited. The great thing right now, VDOT just announced a couple weeks ago, kind of really serendipitous timing. There's this open review and comment period, and they have the Gleebrook corridor is something that they're honing in on. They have some recommended improvements for the north edge of this Glebe and Route Arlington Boulevard intersection. We will be working with our traffic engineers and our staff partners to also make sure that they recognize and understand that there's going to be more residential use on our south side of this interchange than there was when maybe they saw it before. So we are definitely interested in participating and helping the county push VDOT improvements along South Glebe. But in terms of all the public right-of-way, that is a state process and not controlled by the county.
And it's probably can't, but I was just wondering, just throwing it out there, that the other part of you said that's owned by someone else, right?
That's right.
Was there ever any talks with them to see if they wanted to, because you could have doubled the amount of affordable housing if it was an expanded joint venture and they could go on the bottom and apartments on top, something like, I'm just throwing that out there.
You know what, we threw it out there too.
Yeah.
Okay. But we were fishing, but but not with any bait, and they didn't nibble.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, and we did talk about it before, but this, since we can see it now, this shared aisle between us, this is what Catherine talked about. That is a a shared permanent easement between us. We've also talked about modifying it. It would have helped us have a little bit more flexibility on some of our site, and it didn't go there. So we've talked, but
I think it's very valuable to them as it is to us. So it's not they were the least bit upset about what we were doing. It's just they have valuable piece of property, and it wasn't at this time something that they wished to entertain the idea.
Nikki, were you the SPRC representative for this?
I was. Unfortunately, I had a family member who's like.
Okay. I was just gonna see if you had any update from those discussions. Any other questions or comments, or are we ready to make a motion?
I think just to follow up on Doris's question, I think with the so-called the elevators, a lot of the issue was the age, and getting parts for them. So.
It was supply chain. It was age. It was a calamity of a squirrel chewing through the conduit.
Right.
It sent a shock, to the solid state system, and then it was December while we're trying to fish and get parts. Yeah.
Hopefully, but a bright, shiny new building. We'll see.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a motion from someone on the commission?
Motion to approve.
I'll second it.
Okay, so motion to recommend approval of the site plan. Let's do roll call. 1 second. I'll start with myself. I vote yes. Commissioner Montgomery,
Yes.
Commissioner Surface,
Yes.
Commissioner Norris,
Yes.
Commissioner Wenger,
Yes.
Commissioner Blake,
Yes.
Commissioner McGilvray,
Yes.
Commissioner Heminger,
Yes.
Commissioner Escobar.
Yes.
Did I miss anyone?
Caroline, it's me, Sarah. I'm here.
Okay. How do you vote, Sarah?
Yes.
Okay, great. It passes unanimously. Thank you. I think as was clear from even the questions, I think we're very much in support of this project. It sounds like it's going to be a wonderful addition to Arlington County and the community, and a great partnership between HC and Goodwill. So looking forward to the eventual construction and having it open up and serve low-income residents in our community. So thank you very much for putting such a good project together.
And thank you all very much.
Okay, next item on our agenda is the Crystal House AHIF allocation.
Oh my gosh.
1 second, Kellen, while we get the
Okay.
slides pulled up.
Oh, that's great.
The first are you.
And Alex, before we start, I know we talked about last meeting having like a one pager on all the different Crystal Houses and the details. Is that something that staff is able to put together?
Yes, I have on the line is Chris Dematsis. He's a project lead for housing for this project. So he'll present this item, but yeah, I can work with him to make sure we get something out on that.
Great. Sounds good. Okay, take it away, Chris.
Great, thank you. Let me share my screen. Can folks hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Let me let me just share this PowerPoint. Can folks see this?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, excellent. So this is, and there will be some background updates, Kellen, I think for you and other folks benefit in this presentation. So this is Crystal House 3. It's a dual action AHIF request for one of the two projects, the 9% side, as well as a revitalization resolution. And so we'll just get right into the nitty gritty here. So by way of background, I think this is probably what you're thinking of. There's the illustrative site plan image is shown here, with the two existing Crystal Houses 1 and 2, which are in the center, the two existing buildings, and then the infill buildings around the perimeter of the site. This was a site plan that was approved in 2019. The total amount of infill development, 820 units. The conveyance, in addition to the conveyance of the Crystal House 5 site to the county as the affordable housing contribution as part of the site plan. Subsequent to that, a year later, Washington Housing Conservancy acquired the site at the end of 2020, and then an affiliate for Amazon acquired the infill development rights via an option agreement. That option agreement was later assigned to the county with a slew of conditions about how the development would proceed, including the priority of affordable housing on the site. It had been entitled as a market rate development prior, and then converted to primarily affordable housing development. The county led a nearly 2-year process to select a development team of APA and EYA, who are here today to talk about this. So this was guided by, of course, the Affordable Housing Master Plan from 2015, and the goals and objectives and policies of that, as well as some other unique properties to the site, including a mixed income approach, because there'd be roughly 25% market rate, which could be leveraged to help cross-subsidize some of the community benefits, as well as the affordable housing, as well as just the sort of standard best practices in the field that that the county maintains through its processes, as well as the State Housing Finance Agency, and everything kind of in between. So a number of things, as well as the milestones that were in the agreement with the Amazon affiliate. So this is a kind of a macro on the project development program as it stands now, noting the existing units in 1 and 2, and then Crystal Houses 3, which we're here to talk about one part of the two parts of that, the 9% portion. Crystal Houses 4, predominantly market rate. 5, currently on hold, but penciled for affordable family. Post any of the infill larger parcel development, and then Crystal Houses 6 has already gone through the minor site plan approval process as a senior building, and 7 and 8 with market rate townhomes. So as a overview of this first phase, 432 total units across both projects in Crystal Houses 3. I mentioned earlier, this is a hybrid 9% low-income housing tax credit project combined with a 4% affordable housing tax credit project. The 9% portion, only 88 units. The AHIF request on this, 12.1 million on the 9% portion, serving folks at 30 to 60% AMI, and a lot of deep skew, deeper subsidy units at 30 and 50% in this project. And then the revitalization area resolution, which is pretty much a standard part of tax credit process in order to enable the competitiveness on tax credits, but as well as enabling Virginia housing financing. So the location of the project here in Crystal City, adjacent to Pentagon City, blocks from the Crystal City Metro Station, as well as a lot of the local serving retail that's down on 23rd Street, as well as north in Pentagon City there. So it's really a pretty amenity-rich location, which is important and transit-oriented. So also very important. So for the affordable housing program, a few things to highlight that go towards the goals and objectives of the Affordable Housing Master Plan, including a significant number of units at 30 and 50%, family-sized units, accessible units, permanent supportive housing units. It's not on the slide, but all the units will be universally designed for people of all ages and abilities. We've got a number of green certifications in here, as well as a long-term affordability commitment to be coterminous with the underlying Amazon covenant. On the sources and uses side of this, we're looking at a roughly $54 million project, which AHIF is one piece to the capital stack that is pretty common in new construction affordable housing buildings. The 9% tax credit equity, Virginia housing loans, state Department of Housing and Community Development dollars, deferred developer fee, and tax credit equity. And then on the uses side, predominantly construction, but also soft cost financing costs and developer fee. So a little bit more detail on the financing of the AHIF loan. What's unique, I think, about this is we're looking at a long-term coterminance with the Virginia housing debt of 40 years. And well below market interest rate, since this is this is GAAP cash flow dependent debt, leveraging nearly $4 for every $1 of county funds. The revitalization, this is the area that is seeking revitalization resolution. So actually combining CH3 with CH6, because both of those will be affordable housing projects in one swoop. This enables additional competitiveness on the tax credit competition in March, but as well as enabling Virginia housing financing. This is supported by the Crystal City Sector Plan, which calls for affordable housing in this area. And in fact, there has been no new construction affordable housing development since the 1970s in this area. So it's kind of an interesting thing to note. One of our colleagues pointed out. APA and its development partners have met with the relevant civic associations and councils locally there, have had two community meetings that have been facilitated by our colleagues in planning as part of the minor site plan process. Have Housing Commission right now, and County Board March 12th, which is 2 days before the tax credit deadline of March 14th. So cutting it a little bit close, but hopefully to get this through there. What are our recommendations? To allocate the AHIF funding in accordance with the structuring, and adopt the revitalization resolution. So with that, I thank you, and we'll turn it over to APA to talk in a little more granularity on these things.
Awesome. Thank you, Chris. Good evening, everyone. I'm Danny Ross with APA, project manager. I've been with APA for almost a year now, so I joined a really interesting time because this was just getting started. So I've been with this for just about a year now. I won't go through, I'll try to fast track and skip over the things that Chris has already spoken about. And I'm pretty sure most of y'all are familiar with APA. We're a mission-driven nonprofit. We have over 2,600 homes. We are expanding outside of Arlington, but Arlington is our home. We are not only focused on providing affordable housing, but we're also very focused on providing resident services so that our residents can thrive. Let's see. There we go. So Chris covered a pretty good overview, but this will just show you an illustrated site plan that's updated with the new footprint for Crystal House 6, which was minor site plan amendment approved in October, and now we're seeking approval for minor site plan amendment for Crystal House 3. The townhomes that Chris mentioned for UIA are along Fern Street, and then the CH6, 4, and 5 in the south corner. The site will also deliver with 2 publicly accessible parks, one at 20th Street and then one at the corner at the top left there. Okay, and so the original approved building design back in 2019 was a market rate building, and so we had to redesign this building to incorporate larger unit types for families. There were 0 3-bedroom units back in the original approved plan. We've added 60. We've increased the number of 2-bedroom floor plans as well. And then, of course, we've reimagined the amenity spaces such that it would be more conducive to families and our resident services programming. We've paid a lot of attention to what their needs are and what the needs are of the various programs and activities, and really have included all of that into our design. So that includes the work of our community rooms, our fitness center, the leasing office, resident services office. With the permanent supportive housing units, we're working with the county DHS, and we propose to provide space for them where they can operate, both with Crystal House 3 and with Crystal House 6, but probably more of a more physical on-site presence at 3. Indoor and outdoor play spaces for children. We've changed the original design of the building to kind of expand an outdoor second-level courtyard to really add a lot of good high-quality outdoor space for the residents. There'll be barbecues, play areas, picnic tables. We're adding a telehealth wellness office as well. The building will provide 190 parking spaces for our residents, plus an additional 199 replacement parking spaces. And so, of course, that does drive up the price a little, but that's sort of part of what we have to do as we're taking out the existing surface parking that's there. In terms of special needs, we've got across the full building on both the 9% and 4% side, 22 permanent supportive housing units. 9 of those will be on the 9% side. In terms of accessibility, 123 of the units will be universal design, with 100% on the 9% side, so 88 units on that side. 27 UFAS 504 units, 9 of which would be improved for visual and audibly impaired, and then 9 ANSI type A compliant units. And this is a rendering from the main entrance, and just giving you the breakdown of the unit types and the different AMI ranges. And this is across the full building. So there's 4 in the 80%, but none of those are in the 9% side. So you can see we've got, like I said, 63 bedrooms, 154 2-bedrooms, so just a lot more family units than was originally proposed. I won't go through this in detail because Chris already walked us through pretty well on the budget, but it's there if we have questions. We've been working very closely with planning to make sure that this building is very pedestrian friendly, particularly along Eads. It's such a long stretch. So we added in 9 stoops, residential stoops that have immediate access to the units, just those units along Eads Street. So really just giving that sort of inviting pedestrian experience along Eads. As I mentioned before, we have this wonderful second level courtyard amenity. The building is going to be Earthcraft Gold, so we're looking at green roofs and a lot of sustainability features. Just sort of zeroing in on some of those amenity spaces. We're really looking to activate the corners of the building. And so the main lobby and common area is a 2-story element. And so this is level 1. You've got the leasing office there. We've got our fitness center mail room. And then, through the main corridor, there's a mid-block amenity space of a library. And then we've got an amenity space at the other lobby, which is also a 2-story lobby, a lot of glass and light. The main lobby connects through grand staircase to additional amenity spaces that connect with that outdoor courtyard. So you've got a lot of natural light coming in to that 2-story element. So it's a very active corner, a lot of amenity spaces, our resident services office right there, child playroom. We've got a multi-purpose room, community room. We even made space for a music room that's going to be sort of soundproof with individual rooms where, children who are learning how to play an instrument can go in the quiet room and close the door and, practice away without disturbing the neighbors. So in terms of schedule, Chris walked through a pretty good clip of this, but we've been doing a lot of community meetings. Planning had us do 2 public meetings. We've had a bunch of civic association meetings in addition to meeting with the residents of the existing Crystal House buildings, which we continue to do and will continue to do. And time is of the essence. We've got 2 days after approval with the county board to submit our tax credits. So all being well, start of construction May of next year, concluding October 2027 in perfect world. And so that's it for me. Obviously, I'll answer questions and you have my email address.
And we have no public speakers on this item.
Okay. Thank you, both staff and applicant, for that presentation. I had a couple questions. One, just a term that I'm less familiar with. I think it was Earthcraft, or that designation. I'm used to like the LEED certification. What's the difference between those 2 designations?
So yeah, I think marketability, more people are familiar with LEED, but Earthcraft works better for Virginia housing due to their requirements. And so most affordable housing developers will seek Earthcraft designation. Very similar. I mean, I think the net result of what you get, you're still going to get a highly energy efficient, sustainable building. We're also seeking some green finance as well. So we're designing to zero energy ready. And so it's going to be just as efficient, if not more so, than a LEED Gold building would be.
Okay, thank you. And then I know part of this proposal, similar to the Goodwill one, is the designation of this as a revitalization area. And Alex, that's something, as you mentioned, doesn't typically come before the Housing Commission. When we're making our recommendation to the board, are we also making a recommendation on the right revitalization area? It doesn't seem like something that's really within our scope to do that, as opposed to just approving, in this case, the AHF allocation or the site plan.
Yeah, I would say that falls to the commission, and if anyone wants to make a motion on it, I think it is within the realm of possible action for you all to approve both or take action on both an AHF allocation and the revitalization resolution, because the county board will also, that is an action that they are also doing, either adopting or not the revitalization resolution.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, unless the commissioners feel differently, since this is a concept I've only learned about today, I don't know that I feel super comfortable having the commission make a recommendation around that, unless other people feel that they have a more solid grasp of, what goes into whether something should be a revitalization area or not.
I thought we usually had in the past. I think this wouldn't be a
I was
first.
going to say, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's the designation that's needed for VHDA.
Yes.
That's right.
Yeah. So I mean, my understanding of that definition of revitalization area is just that there is a level of revitalization going on, and that there's a dedication to revitalization in that area. And I would say Crystal House is like the poster child for that. So I have no trouble approving for that.
Okay. If when we make a motion, if someone wants to include that, we didn't specifically spell that out for the Goodwill one. So unless we want to go back and amend that approval, I don't think that was part of what, because the motion was just to approve the site plan. But and maybe I'm just being too technical about it, but just it's a new thing for me at least. But I did have a couple questions about AHIF. So I know for this project, it had said that this was one AHIF allocation for Crystal House 3, but that the county is expecting 29 million in additional AHIF allocations for the same site as well as Crystal House 6. I was curious, like how much is left in AHIF at this point?
Can we clarify that?
Yeah.
That's not good.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you guys want to start with that? Or
The 29. Do you want to just clarify the 29? So that's really for the other project of Crystal Houses 3, which is the 4% side of that, and Crystal Houses 6 would be a separate allocation request. I guess that's the first clarification. I mean, I think to the broader question about like, do we have the AHIF money? I might turn to my colleague Anne if she would like to speak to that, if she's available.
Hi, everyone. So I think I've met most of you, but I'm Ann Venezia. I'm the housing director for Arlington. And so just to answer, so we have anticipated the Crystal House, the entirety of these projects coming forward actually for a couple of years now. So we have been budgeting for the anticipated requests based on the proposal that the APO EY team submitted, as well as the DDA that was signed about 14 months ago now. So we have been budgeting for these requests in anticipation of them coming forward. So again, as Chris said, we have the request that's at hand now, and we already are budgeting for the future requests that we anticipate will be coming forward. So hopefully that answers your question in terms of if we have sufficient funds for these.
So it's not so much that I was wondering whether we have sufficient funds to pay this. I assume staff would not bring this forward if we didn't have the money, sitting in an account somewhere. But more so, I'm trying to think with the budget coming up, as we're looking at how much the county manager is going to propose for AHIF allocations in the future, like how much money is going to be left over after this 12 million, after the 29 million, if those are already, set aside. It would just be helpful to know, AHIF currently has like 60 million in it. And so we can calculate how much this would draw it down, and then how much we would need for a site like Goodwill in the future if they were going to come and, ask for AHIP money, which I've heard is a real possibility for that project. So I was trying to get a sense of like how much money we have left in AHIF and how much this would take away from that.
So we can, I don't have those numbers off the top of my head tonight. We could try to get those numbers back for the commission. I will say though, as we do our budgeting, we do it as a multi-year process. So a point in time balance right now won't necessarily represent the budgeting that we're doing for these multi-year, these massive projects, including Crystal House. What we have communicated to potential applicants for funds, including HC and Goodwill, is that we do have federal funds available. And so we actually have a request for letters of intent process that's live right now. And so we've encouraged applicants to pursue funds through that mechanism. And then as there are local monies that may be available to supplement that request for letters of intent, the federal funds that are available, we'll consider rolling those in so that projects that are outside of Barcroft and Crystal House, and again, these massive multi-year projects, that would be their best opportunity to pursue funding. And we've communicated that very clearly to Goodwill and to other folks as well, that right now the federal funds is really their best bet if they need immediate commitments in the next, year, 18 months.
Are you all able to share kind of that multi-year budget outlook for AHIF and kind of what you see is coming up for AHIF, like using the funds, and versus, you know, how much is there versus what you're anticipating is coming in AHIF? That would be very interesting to see in the commission. I don't know if that's something that you guys share publicly, but if you're able to, that would be helpful.
I can talk with our leadership about what we're able to share, because it does anticipate a certain funding level going forward and things like that, which I think, as everybody knows, is subject to the annual budget adoption process. But I can try to check internally about what's available to share.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
And I did have another question. So I know previously we had talked about, as sort of coming out of the Serrano recommendations, like having resident councils at each of the properties that received AHIP funding. And I know the county has already sort of launched that with Barcroft. Is that something that is anticipated for this property as well, having a resident council on site?
So I know through our resident services, we do have a resident council. I think it is for all properties, if I'm not mistaken. So this would be.
This would be different than that. So that so when I say resident council, I mean tenants set the agenda. They can bring up whatever they want, which is different than APA's overall resident council, where APA, you know, says this is what the agenda is. This is what you're allowed to discuss. Don't bring up like maintenance issues or complaints here. This isn't the forum for that. This is more so like property specific. You know, what issues do the tenants want to bring to APA or to the property manager that they see as challenges or issues. So different than APA's overall resident council, which I think is more so just providing feedback to APA on like a broader scale of how APA does business.
So we are partnering with, so we have our on-site resident services. We are also partnering with DHS. And so there are some collaborative partners that really have residents' interests at heart. But I don't think we have a resident council specified for this specific property.
From a staff perspective, is that something that you all are looking to have set up here as part of, because I know part of the push was basically the county would be working to try to get this set up as opposed to relying on the affordable housing provider to create it.
I'm not aware of anything specific, but I can certainly relay that back to Marquand.
Yeah, I think this is something we would want to discuss further with them, the kind of the benefits and of that approach. But yeah, I mean, I don't know, Ann, did you have any other things?
Yeah, I mean, Kellen, I know we've had these conversations. I mean, we are not currently staffed to set up resident councils at the 50+ properties we have in our portfolio. There's only about 20 of us in the division right now. So, you know, we are using other tools such as Bugata and also working with, you know, owners to try to promote the you know, ideally resident councils are more organic and they kind of come up through a need at these properties. So we'll continue to try to use these tools and see. What we're doing at Barcroft is sort of a pilot just to see, you know, what approaches work well in order to get a council going. And so hopefully we can take the lessons learned from that and try to employ that at our other properties. But it really is a challenging resource issue. Again, we are just not staffed to go around and set up resident councils at every property in the portfolio, unfortunately. But we will continue to try to provide the supports that we can so that when the conditions are right for those councils to set up, we can be there to help support.
Thank you, Ann. That's helpful for our budget letter and advocacy that will be coming up in the next month. Okay. Any questions, comments from commissioners?
I have a comment.
Okay. Oh, go ahead.
I attended the meeting on Tuesday or Wednesday this week, and there was a lot of public comment on it. And I just wanted to recognize staff for being able to, I guess, answer the questions in a really thorough and comprehensive way. I felt like every question that came was just well responded to. There's a lot of data, a lot of research, and it was well vetted. So hats off to all the housing staff.
Okay, thank you all. My only other recommendation is considering different names for the different buildings. So, because 3, 4, 6, it's just confusing. But yeah, do we have a motion from someone on the commission?
For the AHIF allocation? Is that what it's for?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll go ahead and make a motion.
I second.
Does that also include the revitalization area designation as well?
Allocation and the revitalization designation.
Resolution.
Oh, resolution, I'm sorry.
Thank you. And sorry, who was the second for that?
Anika.
Okay, thank you. Okay, let's do a roll call vote. I vote yes. Commissioner Montgomery,
Yes.
Commissioner Surface,
Yes.
Commissioner Norris,
Abstain.
Commissioner Wenger,
Yes.
Commissioner Ubakava,
Yes.
Commissioner Blake,
Yes.
Commissioner McGilvray,
Yes.
Commissioner Heminger,
Yes.
Commissioner Escobar.
Yes.
Great. It passes unanimously. Thank you to both the applicant and staff for your presentations and for the exciting new Crystal House 3 LIHTC 9% project moving forward, not to be confused with a 4%. But yeah, looking forward to this becoming a reality. So thank you all.
Thanks, everyone.
Next item on the agenda is the Columbia Pike Forum-Based Code Elder Care Amendment.
And Kellen, could I jump in for 2 points of clarification really quick? So I have AHC was still listening into the meeting and heard our talk about the revitalization resolution. So a point of clarification for them, was that motion encompassing the revitalization resolution? It was part of the staff recommendation to include that, and it is the staff recommendation for the county board to adopt that revitalization resolution. So just wanted to make that point of clarification before we move on.
Sure. Is there any objection to including the recommendation around the revitalization area in our previously adopted motion for the Goodwill property?
Okay, great. Thank you. And then the second point of clarification, there might have been a copy of the agenda circulating that this next item is an information item. It is an action item. And Olivia Sontag with planning is here to present.
Sorry. Could we take a 5-minute break?
Sure. Yep. Let's come back at 8:33.
Thanks a lot.
Awesome.
Thanks. Bless you to whoever sneezed.
Like from back in the day, which is long since gone.
I mean, it was.
Okay. Alex, is everyone back?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. I think we can go ahead and get started then.
Okay, great. So this is Olivia with the Planning Division.
Hi, good evening. I'll just wait for a thumbs up. Can everybody see the presentation? Wonderful. So as Alex said, my name is Olivia Sontag with the Arlington County Planning Division. There are several different changes proposed under this amendment, but the primary objective is addressing affordability requirements for elder care uses in the Columbia Pike Neighborhoods Form-Based Code. So the item for consideration this evening is an ordinance to amend, reenact, and recodify the Arlington County Zoning Ordinance Appendix A and B, which are the Columbia Pike Commercial and Neighborhoods Form-Based Codes, to establish elder care vehicle parking requirements, elder care bicycle parking requirements, and update the affordability requirements for elder care development projects utilizing the codes. So elder care uses, which in this case include independent living, assisted living, continuing care, and nursing homes, have not always been listed in the zoning ordinance or the form-based codes. But in 2019, the county board approved zoning ordinance amendments, which inadvertently excluded elder care uses from being introduced into both of the form-based codes. So in September of 2023, these elder care uses were introduced into both of the codes, but specific parking standards and adjustments to the affordability requirements were not assessed at that time. So currently there are no affordability requirements for development projects in the commercial code, but the neighborhoods code requires on-site CAFs for residential development, which includes elder care, and then a cash contribution to AHIP for the commercial development. So again, this amendment will focus primarily on the neighborhoods form-based code. So to orient you quickly, here's a snapshot of Columbia Pike, the form-based code boundaries, with Columbia Pike running east to west through the spine of this area. This amendment primarily aims to address the elder care affordability requirements in the neighborhoods code, which are shown in blue, but also addresses the parking and bicycle parking standards in both of the codes. So there's continued interest in developing elder care facilities along Columbia Pike, but we know that the code's parking and affordable housing standards are tailored for typical multifamily residential projects and should be adjusted to account for the high cost and service needs of elder care facilities. So although we know that on-site CAFs are needed and preferred, and we heard this desire at meetings with the zoning committee, the Commission on Aging, Form-Based Code Advisory Working Group, and Planning Commission, through our analysis, we've learned that the comprehensive response to establishing required subsidies for elder care uses will need to involve further study by staff, as well as support from the General Assembly and Governor on legislation to amend the Code of Virginia, which is where Arlington's affordable housing ordinance is also codified. So until these steps can occur, staff is recommending we enable the cash contribution option to match the existing contribution calculations that are allowed for commerce and retail projects. The contribution is based on $1 per square foot of GFA within the first 1.0 of FAR, and then a separate ratio for GFA greater than the 1.0 FAR. We're also proposing to keep the option for developers to provide on-site units for elder care development projects in lieu of the cash contribution, but recognize that under the current requirements, developers must provide a minimum of 20% of the net new units as on-site CAFs, which is currently generally infeasible. The recently approved site plan Sunrise at South Glebe Assisted Living Facility, which is not within the form-based code, but is near to the form-based code boundaries, proposed 99 units and had the option to provide a cash contribution or one on-site or one off-site unit, which, you know, as a comparison is 1% of the overall unit count. So for the form-based code, in comparison to that, past neighborhoods form-based code residential developments have been required to provide anywhere between 8 and 26% of CAFs as a percent of the overall unit count. So we know that further study is necessary to right size these numbers and determine that appropriate unit requirement that's specific to form-based code elder care facilities. So this amendment is an initial step, but it's still really important to remove the barrier for elder care development under the form-based code, and for now at least makes the affordability options consistent with projects elsewhere in the county. And then also as a technical cleanup, we're proposing to explicitly list civic uses under the cash contribution option, as these do not contain residential units. So separately, staff's also proposing to update the elder care parking and bicycle parking requirements. The form-based codes do not currently distinguish elder care parking requirements from conventional multifamily and townhome uses. So the residential minimum parking requirement is 1.125 spaces per unit, and modifications to parking are not allowable under either code. And then in comparison, under the zoning ordinance, it requires on the order of about 0.5 parking spaces per bedroom for elder care facilities. So in consideration of the modification constraint under the form-based codes, the existing parking requirements in the zoning ordinance for elder care projects that are located elsewhere in the county, and then also some available regional parking ratio data for elder care facilities. Parking staff recommends a 0.4 parking spaces per bedroom for independent living, assisted living, and continuing care uses, and then a 0.4 spaces per bed for nursing home uses. And then additionally, our parking staff was recommending 1 employee bicycle parking space per 10 beds and 1 visitor space per 50 beds. So the proposed amendments have been reviewed by the Zoning Committee, Commission on Aging, and Form-Based Code Advisory Working Group, where general support was expressed. ZOCO and Commission on Aging members asked staff to verify the feasibility of requiring on-site committed affordable units instead of a cash contribution option, but did acknowledge the high subsidies required to accomplish any level of on-site affordability. Staff research suggests that elder care uses require a more nuanced approach to support the inclusion of caps, and the percent of units and length of commitment expected would all need to be studied further in order to achieve meaningful levels of affordability. And then additionally, any changes to the existing affordability options codified in the zoning ordinance would require that support from the General Assembly and Governor on legislation to amend the Code of Virginia, which again is where the affordable housing provision of Arlington zoning ordinance is also codified. So following the December County Board meeting for the request to advertise, the proposed amendments were heard by the Planning Commission this past Monday. Discussion at the Planning Commission centered on the importance and preference for on-site CAFs over a cash contribution, but also an understanding of the importance of this proposed amendment as an interim step and as a path for realizing elder care facilities in the near term until further study along Columbia Pike and countywide can take place. So following their discussion, the Planning Commission voted unanimously 11-0 to recommend the County Board adopt the ordinance. The Planning Commission also made a motion requesting the county to continue studying improvements to assisted care affordability. And then the County Board will consider these amendments at their hearing on February 24th. So that concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to answer questions of the Commission.
Thank you very much for the presentation. So just to clarify, make sure I'm completely understanding. So in addition to changing the parking requirements to basically reduce the parking required for elder care facilities, and also changing the bicycle requirements, this is essentially not requiring on-site affordable units for elder care facilities that are built along Columbia Pike, given that the staff believes that it's financially infeasible to build them with the current requirements for on-site units. And so it would just be a in lieu of fee contribution to AHIF instead.
Yes, it would be extending the option to enable the cash contribution option. And again, that's a similar option that's available to elder care development everywhere else in the county. So it would make at least the two opportunities consistent.
Okay. Questions comments from commissioners?
Doris has a question.
Go ahead, Doris.
I need some clarification. An elder care unit, what is the benefit to the senior who's occupying the unit?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear the question very well. Do you mind repeating it?
I think Doris said, what's the benefit to the occupant of the unit? Doris, do you want to clarify what you meant by that?
Well, what I want to clarify is, so were these units, are these only going to be used by organizations that are providing assisted living? That are in the business of doing that, or are they like for seniors who might be hiring their own aides or personal assistants, or is it like a project where there's going to be it's a total project like one I know of in Falls Church, which is assisted living, and it's actually in a building. It's kind of unusual, but it's right in downtown Falls Church. But it's assisted living. So what I'm asking about the benefit of this is to the consumer, the senior, is this going to result in bringing down the price of just at the minimum the rental of such units? I mean, it's a pretty high rental or occupancy cost. I think it's usually rental, and then on top of that you have a pretty high service cost, for the assistance with personal needs and with housekeeping and all of that and other things. So is this intended to bring the price down to the consumer, or it's just intended to bring the cost of developing such a project down for the provider?
So I think first I want to just clarify that this would only apply to projects who, independent living, assisted living, continuing care, or any, combination of all of those, and nursing homes. It would only apply to those projects which fall under those definitions. It would not, and I know this was not quite your question, but it would not apply to any age-restricted facilities. Those facilities are still considered, they fall under the multifamily residential category, and they would still be required to provide on-site CAFs. So I just wanted to make sure that piece was clear. But under this proposal, the developer would be required to designate, this cash contribution, which would go to the county's Affordable Housing Investment Fund. And I'm sorry, I'm not on housing staff. I don't know if there's anyone from housing staff here to speak to how on the AHIF end of things that those funds are distributed. But I believe that it goes towards the rent for the individual.
But it goes into AHIF for the purpose of doing projects like building a project that would be assisted living. That's what I think I'm hearing now. That it's just a contribution,
I think,
right?
Yeah, Doris, I don't think there's any restriction on how the AHIF funds would be used. I think it just goes into the general AHIF pot, and then the county decides what to do with it from there. But Olivia, if you could, again, just define when we say elder care facilities, like exactly what this does and does not apply to?
But not on site necessarily is what I, it's in the form-based code, and it's a cash contribution to the AHIF. That's what I think I'm hearing.
Yes.
But it's not necessarily for a project built on Columbia Pike. Right?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. So it's just it kind of concerns me that it especially because assisted living and senior living of that type is pretty expensive to the consumer, and the concept kind of doesn't sit in my mind as being, of some benefit to lower modest income seniors. So that's what I'm hearing, but I'm letting the commission know what's going in my mind about a concern I might have. So, thank you.
Thanks, Doris. Yes, appreciate the concern, and it's not one that's isolated to Columbia Pike. So it's something that we're continuing to discuss, at a staff, at a county level. But Kellen, back to your question, the elder care facilities encompass that independent living, assisted living, continuing care, and nursing home facilities. So in order to qualify for the cash contribution option, you have to fall under the definition of those, which involves, any of the services that are provided for any of those uses, et cetera. So if you were just simply an age-restricted multifamily community, you would not be able to utilize the cash contribution option. You would still have to meet the on-site CAF requirements under the form-based code.
Okay, thank you. I think where I got confused was the nursing homes and the other things. I guess the nursing home doesn't have to be age restricted, and assisted living potentially not as well. So yeah, I think I got confused by the age restricted
just
piece of it.
simply being age restricted without any other services. We still want those types of, because they don't have the complicated kind of service expenses that we're trying to solve for in these other communities. And so we still have the expectation that even an age-restricted facility would still provide those on-site CAFs.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Other questions, comments from commissioners?
Just to clarify, so the form-based code in Columbia Pike, are you all saying that currently regular apartment buildings are required to provide 20% CAFs along Columbia Pike? Is that the way it works?
If it's new development.
Yeah, net new units, so 20 to 30% of net new units. So it's fairly high, a high expectation. So I think just looking back at some of what our past projects have yielded, it's been a range of anywhere as low as 8% all the way up to 26% of those net new units have to be designated as CAFs. So under the current requirement, any elder care facility would also, be required to designate that same level of CAFs, which is
so it's just a much higher requirement along Columbia Pike than the rest of the county, which I didn't even realize you're allowed to do on a state level.
On the form-based code, it has its own exemptions and restrictions.
And it's because it's an incentive tool. So when you opt into using the form-based code, you do have access to some additional density, not near the density that, we might see along some of the metro corridors, but that is why we're allowed to, layer on some of these additional requirements that again are non-negotiable requirements. They're not, added community benefits. They're just as an expectation required once you opt to develop using the form-based code.
Okay, thanks for clarifying.
Yeah.
Other questions, comments? Okay. Do we have a motion?
I can share my screen again with the ordinance language if that's helpful.
Sure.
Motion to approve.
Okay.
I get it.
Hang on just a second.
So.
Motion to recommend
Approval of
that they do this.
Amend.
What's on the screen? Okay. Do we have a second for that motion?
Second.
Okay. Let's do a roll call. And I vote yes. Commissioner Montgomery,
Yes.
Commissioner Surface,
Yes.
Commissioner Norris,
Yes.
Commissioner Wanger,
Yes.
Commissioner Rubalcaba, Commissioner Rubalcaba, Commissioner Blake.
Oh, there she still is.
She's still
there.
there.
She's just muted.
We'll come back. Commissioner Blake,
Yes.
Commissioner McGilvray,
Yes.
Commissioner Heminger,
Yes.
Commissioner Escobar.
Yes.
Okay. Commissioner Rubalcaba. Okay, well, it passes among all those voting unanimously. Oh, okay. I don't know that there's a way that I can, we're not allowed to use the chat to communicate official things in the meeting, so.
Olivia, you can hear us, correct?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, and I can hear too. That's a, yeah. But yeah, we can just move forward without her vote. It wouldn't have changed the outcome. Okay, well, thank you very much, Olivia, for your presentation and explanations as well.
Yes, thank you.
Next item on the agenda is a presentation on rental market trends.
Good evening, Commissioners. Russell Schroeder with the Housing Division. I was discussing, I think at a Langston Boulevard meeting with Kellen, some of these trends, and kind of he thought it would be useful for you all to get kind of an insight in what's going on. And so first, I want to. In October, we launched an affordable housing dashboard. So I don't know if you're all familiar with that, but I'm going to start by that. If you go to the county webpage and if you just plug in even dashboard, but if you plug in housing dashboard, and the reason I'm doing this is so you know where to find stuff. On this page, which is the launching page for the dashboard, you can find basically most of the county plans that pertain to housing, homelessness, fair housing, as well as all the reports and other dashboards that might be of use as you're evaluating a project, such as the race and ethnicity dashboard for the county, which breaks things down by census tract or city association. But I'm here to talk about rent trends. And so the dashboard itself kind of is useful for exploring where CAFs are, how affordable they are, et cetera, et cetera. But it also is a convenient way to link and get to this, which used to be buried somewhere on our webpage, which you'd be lucky if you stumbled across. But as you can see in the lower left corner, you've got housing, rental housing market. And this is updated quarterly. And this takes you to the report that we have, which I don't know if I've shared with you in past meetings, but it's been revamped for the new year. We've been doing this since 2020, and so have kind of freshened it up a little bit. And it's updated quarterly, shows you what the rents are in Arlington, but also by each of the quarters. So there's a drop-down box here. You can look at how rents are faring in any of the adopted planning quarters: Columbia Pike, Langston Boulevard, Richmond Highway, and Rosslyn Ballston. Just overall, what the picture shows here is that rents increased from 2.3% to 5.3%. And it's broken out by bedroom because I don't like the average rent, because average of what? You don't know. And people don't consume an average apartment. They consume by a 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom. And so the rent's broken out that way. And you can see that rents have increased over the last year, except for the 3 bedrooms in this chart, at a rate higher than inflation. So the CPI for the Consumer Price Index for the Washington area rose by 2.8% in the same period. And so these rents have been increasing faster. If you drill down to different areas, you can see that Columbia Pike had an even greater, year-over-year change, whereas the RB corridor, again, lower on the studios and 1-bedrooms, but higher on the 2s and 3s. So it depends what you're looking at and where you're looking at. So for future reference, invite you to check in on that from time to time. Also have a time series that shows, again, by bedroom, comparing the different corridors in Arlington, the 1-bedroom apartments, or whatever size you're looking at. And then we also have a page that compares Arlington with surrounding jurisdictions in the region. And for this, we're looking at Fairfax County, but the section of Fairfax within the Beltway, because that's really a peer. If we look at Montgomery County also, we're looking within the Beltway because that's kind of a peer jurisdiction. If we look all the way up to Damascus, that's a different market. But we can see Arlington is the orange line here, the second highest rents after the district. For studio apartments, Arlington is more expensive than the district. 1-bedrooms, less expensive than the district, but still we're the higher, we're kind of at the top of the costs in the region. Also have a page here showing the relative affordability in the context of the area median income, which we all, I think, are familiar with. A lot of jargon, but trying to make it so folks understand that. So backing up to averages in my mini rant, I guess, on why I don't like looking at average rent. And when you see articles saying, well, the average rent here and the average rent there, you should ignore them. Because as you can see, the composition of the basket of goods that make up that average is very different from place to place. And so unless you're talking about the same product, if you're talking about a 1-bedroom apartment, and better yet, a 1-bedroom apartment in a specific context, like in a high-rise or garden apartments, average rents will be misleading. So just okay. So backing up to get to the point of this evening. In 2017, we did a report on market rate affordable housing. It was 2 years after we had adopted the Affordable Housing Master Plan. We had a famous chart like this that showed the number of market rate affordable housing at 60% of AMI, dramatically decreasing in the early 2000s and continuing in the 2010s. And then you can see there's a little trend line that shows a not happy place for the future of market rate affordable housing. That's where we were when we did our Marks report. So I'm here to update the picture. So we have provided information that's in our indicators every year, what the number of market rate affordable housing that we have at 60% and 80%. So this chart's looking at the 60% market rate affordable housing. We've seen that increase since 2017. And actually, I'm going to layer on because we've also been preserving some of that housing. So when we preserve, here's the individual apartment buildings that have been acquired and preserved over that time period. We have actually more affordable housing. The market rate affordable housing plus what's been converted from market rate affordable housing, we're at a higher point than we were at 2010. Obviously, 2000 we had a lot of it, but 2000 is beginning to be very ancient history. Anyway, so this is very interesting, and so looking at just rent increases, and here we're looking at rent increases. The green line is actually one-bedroom rent increases, and AMI increases, and you all know that every year, April, we get new area median income numbers from HUD, and those determine the rents that can be charged in affordable housing. They also determine, the measure that we're using to determine whether things are market rate affordable or not. And so this is an interesting chart. You see that from 2010 to 2017, that the AMI increases, the cumulative AMI increases were pretty minor. And then it really took off 2017 to 2023. I'm not going to break that down in two separate charts, so you can see, like, starting from a base year of 2010 and a base year of 2017. And you see that from 2010 to 2016, that rent increases outpaced the median income increases. But from 2017 to 2023, the AMI increases, the median income, really outpaced rent increases. And so again, AMI being the measure, that explains somewhat what we see on this chart, because from 2010 to 2016, rents increased by 12%, while the AMI only increased by 5%. So that caused us to lose many market rate affordable housing, because we're not losing, the primary cause of the loss of market rate affordable housing is rent increases, not demolitions. We don't have a lot of demolitions in Arlington. A few here and there, but it's really not the overall driver. It's primarily the market. And then on the other side, we see that from 2017 to 2023, that rents increased by 16%, while area median income increased by 37%. So it makes sense that we're recapturing these because the measure that we're using is also changing. So again, the same chart with the red line for AMI and the green line for rents, but adding the consumer price index for our region, less shelter. So if you add shelter, it's kind of a feedback loop because the rent is that. So, but we see that the rent increase basically is aligning really with what the consumer price index has done. So it is moving pretty much in tandem with inflation. AMI has increased at a much higher rate, and that's good if your income is increasing. And I'll recognize that this is a metric that we use, and it's kind of a macro measure. Not everybody's income increases in pace with area median income. And so I looked at some of the occupations and sectors where residents of community affordable housing work. There's many in the food industry and also in the retail industry. I think that if we go, and I'm going to go back just for a second because I want to share it with you. Back to our nifty dashboard, because one of the pages on there shows us what this is based on a random sampling of affordable housing residents. What sectors, where do people work who live in affordable housing? And we see that the retail is 14% of residents work in retail, and the restaurant sector, another 13%. Construction is the other major sector, and delivery and drivers is the other. But anyways, so going back to this chart, we're looking at, have the wages of folks in those sectors increased as well? Well, the average wage, and again, that's an average, it's a metric. Doesn't mean that everybody's wage is increasing the same. But those have increased actually greater than the area median income. So hopefully, that folks are keeping pace with that. I understand individuals are going to have different experiences, and this doesn't explain everything. But let's get back here. And really, that's what I have for you tonight. But happy to answer any questions you might have. Karen.
So my question is, and maybe you said this and I missed it, the data that you get, how do you get this data about the rents? Like,
yeah, so we get data from CoStar. Who's moving to Arlington now? You've probably read in the press. But they're a major. They're a commercial real estate firm. They track data. They own apartments.com, so they have kind of the back end thing that actually feeds into that. So for the Marks data, yes?
CoStar.
To get kind of the unit level for Marks, we, in July of each year, kind of download stuff. And for buildings with more than 100 units, we look at actually unit things, because the average rent in a building doesn't, of course, the average rent of a one bedroom in a building, there might be 5 different size one bedroom apartments on different floors. And so there's a lot of different rents and variability in that. And so what we see is that actual rents within a building, there's a lot of mixed income, even in our site plan market rate with minimal affordable housing. There's a variety of incomes within there. Granted, the bulk of that over 80% AMI, but there are some 80% AMI units oftentimes kind of mixed in there, the smaller studios and smaller one bedrooms sometimes.
my other question also, like when you have like people that own, like owners, like own units in condominiums and they rent that out, you're not able to capture that.
That we're unable to capture.
Okay.
Yeah. And we know about a third of, or 30% of condominiums are rented. So that unfortunately, there's no good way to get a grasp on that.
Do you know which corridor added the most units over the last couple of years? Because I imagine those are some of the ones that are skewing like way up as you're getting a lot of like luxury.
Yeah, I don't have that offhand, but the development tracking dashboard does have that. The county has another dashboard.
Some of it Columbia Pike.
That because me too, like the Trove
was on that early.
Yeah, and actually earlier today I looked at, like, if I stripped out all the site plan units, basically everything built from 2010 to now, and looked at how rents have increased, did those increase at the same as are the new units skewing everything higher? And from what I downloaded, and again, I haven't fully vetted it, but it appears that no, it appears that everything, that I would have thought that new units skew the averages much higher. But it doesn't appear to be the case. Yes.
Yeah, very cool dashboard. So I'm wondering if the dashboards have anything about, so say you are a household of a certain percentage income, like 30%, like what percentage or what number of units in the county would you be able to afford, whether it's market rate or committed?
We don't have it finely detailed, but we do have it set by 60% and 80%. So we haven't gone on the committed affordable side. If I'm going to go back and I'm going to open it up for you because it's another resource. So again, the dashboard supplants what we used to do for an annual report. But we do have, and it's over on this right side, we do an indicators report. When we adopted the Affordable Housing Master Plan, there were 3 documents: the master plan, the implementation framework, which kind of said how we were going to do things and what we were going to do, and then a guide for monitoring and reporting, which established, well, we have all these policies, what are the metrics for each of the policies? And so there's like 63 indicators. And so under supply, and I don't know if you can see this, I'm gonna
Of course you can read it.
try and, you can see under the committed affordable units, we break it down by percentage of AMI that for each of those. And we've actually added, there's a significant number of units that are subject to other contracts with HUD, housing assistance payments, which we previously just kind of counted. But those units actually serve folks from 0% AMI to 50% AMI. So projects like Claridge House in Crystal City, 300 units, all subject to housing assistance payments, allows folks with extremely low income to live there. And so I think we previously classified them as 60% caps, but that's not what they are. So those are drawn out here as well. So unfortunately, you can't see everything on the screen, but this, it does break it down. And then there's one for caps, for marks. There's also on the dashboard a map of the market rate affordable housing and just generally, and then the 60% ones. So if you're really interested in a 60% market rate, which is a valuable resource because some people don't want to deal with the administrative burden of what the documentation it might take to be accepted as a CAF resident.
Yeah. I guess a quick follow-up to that. So in order to be accepted as a CAF resident, do you have to have legal status? Do you have to have documentation to be undocumented?
Household, I think you do have to have.
I'm uncertain. I'm uncertain about that, actually.
I think you do for federal programs.
Yeah, for federal programs you do. I don't know whether our CAF requires that as well.
Yeah, I think for CAFs, I think you don't have to, but for the housing grants and for housing choice vouchers, you do. But
if the property has LIHTC.
Yeah, so that's most, not all, but
yeah, that's probably most.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Russell, appreciate the presentation. And so how has this changed county thinking and sort of forecasting? Since this is quite different from the narrative that I feel like many of us were operating under, a few years ago. So what does this mean for housing division staff when you're thinking about, how to move forward with affordable housing in Arlington?
I think we're trying to figure out what that means. As you know, we adopted a housing conservation district in 2017, and that work evolved into a multifamily reinvestment study, which got put on hold, and we anticipate that to come back. And so I think that this informs that. We're not, I don't think we're clear exactly on what it means. We're happy, delighted to see that the numbers are improving, that in addition to the committed affordable housing, we didn't lose all our market rate affordable housing. It's still there. It's still a strong part of the market. But we're still, we still have needs in the community. So I don't think it's not time to step off, take our foot off the pedal, as it were. And as you've seen tonight, there's projects are going forward. It's still a priority for the county to be able to provide housing for all who have a housing need.
And so I guess the data is essentially kind of saying that Arlingtonians are becoming wealthier even at lower income levels, and so that's outpacing rent increases.
Well, I wouldn't say Arlingtonians. Remember, we're looking at the area median income, and so that's for the metropolitan statistical area, which encompasses many counties, all the way to Jefferson County, West Virginia. Okay. Stafford counties in there.
Fredericksburg.
Williams. What?
Fredericksburg.
I think so, yeah. So it's a large area, it's a very large area, but because it's a regional metric, and Arlington's median income is actually higher than the area median income because we're a wealthy community. But the story is that yes, AMI has increased a lot. I was heartened to see that that certain sectors seemed to increase along with that you would fear would be left behind, because I think we've looked at that in the past and have seen that the hotel and retail sectors were lagging in income increases while other sectors were increasing. And I think it's one of the stories with the pandemic, with the labor shortages, that those sectors actually were able to make gains that they hadn't been able to in the past.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I have one question. A lot of data on the dashboard. Are we capturing racial data for CAFs on there?
Yes. So this is the first year that we've done it, and what we have, it's not 100% of the CAFs. We worked with the larger providers. So AHC, APA, and Wesley provided us with information on all the CAFs that they have in their portfolio. And again, I'll pull it up.
Is that like half of our CAFs, 80% of our CAFs?
It's less than half of our CAFs. So our goal is to work towards 100%, but we're starting from somewhere. And so we hope to build upon that in the future. But
Those data would be voluntarily collected.
that would be voluntarily collected, and as you know, that with voluntarily collected data, that people often opt not to provide the information. So let me go back to the dashboard to show you where that is. Go to dashboard. Tried to organize this. So we're interested in something about committed affordable housing, and we want to know who lives in committed affordable housing. And so here's the breakdown. And so we can see it's 2.6% Asian Pacific, 17.65 Black or African American, 31.1 Hispanic or Latino, Native American, 1%. What is that wedge? 2 or more races, 7%, but a large chunk, 27%, information not provided, it's unavailable. We would like to get that lower, but people have to feel comfortable providing that information.
Yeah.
And not specifically at the CAF residence piece, but we also do have a race and ethnicity dashboard, and that we pull that data by census tract, and that's where we pull that data for the site plan, racial equity sections that we've been including.
And again, if you bookmark this page for the dashboard, you can go to that race and ethnicity dashboard right here on the side. So it's your one-stop shop for information. So
yeah, I'll send that out to the commission, the link to the dashboard.
One thing I wanted to just lift up was, it just seems, I think we all kind of knew this, but just based off of that preliminary data, it appears as an overwhelming percentage of people of color living in our CAF units. I think we all kind of knew that anecdotally, but to kind of see it on a map was kind of a little impactful for me. I think about the Black percentage of Arlington as 9%, I think I heard you say 17%. When we think about our minority communities and how small they are in Arlington, but how overrepresented they are in our community affordable is just an important call out for me, so I appreciate it.
And I think I don't have the information with me, but it's in our needs analysis where we look at the population below 60% of AMI and the demographic makeup of that population. And I think we want to be sure that, does our CAF population align with it? Are we serving the people who we've identified as needing assistance?
Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you so much. Is this presentation, it'll go on our website as well?
Yeah, I'll post the slides to the website.
Great, thank you. Super helpful. Really appreciate you putting that together for the commission. Okay, good. Next item on our agenda is the work plan for the Housing Commission. So hopefully people had a chance to look through it. I made the changes that we talked about last month. I added in the people who signed up to represent the Housing Commission before the county board, which all the spots were filled, which is great. So thank you for being very responsive to that. I want to point out just a couple changes and talk through some other sort of plans for the commission. So if you could go down to the policy one and then specifically, sorry, it's a little bit further up. Yep. So towards the bottom of that page, where we have the examining opportunities to increase the supply of affordable rental housing. So I know one of the things that the commission brought up quite a few times last year when we were talking about legislative priorities, but also when we were talking just about site plans that just had a lack of on-site units, was can we look at the affordable housing ordinance and the enabling legislation in Virginia code and make a recommendation to the county board to change it so that Arlingtonians get a better deal than what they're getting today. And I know staff had provided their report on that to us. The Community Foundation has also come out with information about how they think it should be changed. So I've been having conversations with county board members, stakeholders in the community, and then also Planning Commission about setting up a subcommittee to focus on this. And right now, nothing is final yet, but it looks like we want to put together a subcommittee to maybe kick off this summer to examine the ordinance and what changes can or should be made to it, and then provide that recommendation to the county board in 2025. So it'd be kind of a multi-year effort so that the board is ready with that recommendation for the 2026 General Assembly session. So this, one of the things that we're potentially working towards with that is having this be a joint subcommittee with the Planning Commission. I've had that conversation with Planning Commission Chair and Vice Chair. We've also been talking to Housing Division staff and Planning Division staff to see how staff could play an important role in this, because the county board is definitely going to want staff to weigh in on any recommendation before they really consider it. So it makes sense for any effort that we would be doing on this to be working in tandem with staff. And since that involves allocation of staff resources, right now, kind of let the board know that if this is something they want us to move forward with, that they'll need to have that conversation with the county manager to make sure that staff have the capacity to support this. But it sounds like something that at least a majority of the board is in support of. And so over the next probably 2 or so months, I'm hoping to get the details of this kind of clarified and worked out with them, as well as the Planning Commission, to see if this would end up being just a subcommittee of the Housing Commission or a joint subcommittee. And since, you know, the scope of this really does impact Planning Commission as well as Housing Commission, I think it makes sense to have it be a joint subcommittee. But I'm sorry, but we'll see what ends up actually happening there. So if you all are interested in having a role on that subcommittee, whatever form it ends up taking, please reach out to me and let me know outside of the meeting, and happy to chat about what role makes the most sense. And this is something that I think will take a good amount of effort and work outside of our regular commission meetings. So I think if we do commit to this as a commission, it would be committing to doing, a substantial amount of work to not only examine the issues involved and develop recommendations, but also involving the broader community in that discussion and making sure the development community and other stakeholders are represented in that process. So I think it's an exciting effort for us to be involved in, and I think it potentially will have a lot of lasting impact on Arlingtonians, especially low-income Arlingtonians, and our ability to provide affordable housing for them. But yeah, we're still working out the details. Sorry. Any specific questions about that?
That's great.
Okay. Another thing that I've been having conversations about is the implementation of the Fair Housing Plan. So if you scroll up a little bit, Alex, it's the other set of 3 bullets, yep, under policy. So this is something that I started talking to CPHC staff about, Housing Vision staff, in the fall, about how the commission could best support implementation of the Regional Fair Housing Plan and Arlington's goals within that. And they've thrown out a couple suggestions on what that could look like, some of which really involve the role of the Office of Human Rights and their enforcement of fair housing, the local county ordinance. So that's something that I, had originally considered, potentially a joint subcommittee with the Human Rights Commission. It looks like that's not the direction that that's going to head. But I am still working with staff and board members to figure out what makes the most sense for our commission to have a role in really proactively encouraging the most comprehensive implementation of the very extensive Fair Housing Plan that the board adopted last summer. And that's been something that's been incredibly important to me for several years, working with the county to help get that plan in place and provide recommendations for what should be in it. And I'm excited to see how we can help them on the implementation piece of it, since there's definitely a lot of gaps in the county's approach to fair housing, especially enforcement and testing. So looking forward to working with staff to try to figure out the best way for us to help engage in moving that forward. Those are 2 of the more significant changes to the plan. I just added sub bullets that talked about kind of what we could look into specifically for both fair housing and also the affordable housing ordinance. The rest of the changes were really just things that came up from the last meeting. Did anyone have any questions or comments on the draft plan?
If I could just make one edit to this table, FY 2024 switch to 2025.
Yep. Thank you, Alex. I will make that change. Any other comments, questions? Okay. Do we have a motion to approve the plan or the work plan?
Yes.
Do we have a second?
I can second that.
Okay. Let's do a roll call vote for this. I vote yes. Commissioner Montgomery?
Yes.
Commissioner Surface?
Yes.
Commissioner Norris?
Yes.
Commissioner Wenger?
Yes.
Commissioner Rubalcaba?
Yes.
Commissioner Blake?
Yes.
Commissioner McGilvray?
Yes.
Commissioner Heminger?
Yes.
And Commissioner Escobar?
Yes.
Great. So we have adopted our work plan for the year. It's a lot, but I'm excited for us to look into it and try to accomplish the goals that we have in here. And I just want to give another update as well, kind of related. So we have a new co-liaison for the Housing Commission. So Susan Cunningham and Matt DeFronti are both now co-liaisons for the Housing Commission, which is a little unusual, but that's what the board decided. So I've now started meeting with both of them to talk through our plans and kind of what they're hoping to see from us. It also involves the two of them getting on the same page as far as how things are going to work and what direction their guidance is provided to us. So we are actively working to fill the vacancies that are on the Housing Commission. I don't have a specific update about when that will be. I know we have a couple candidates that have applied and that I've interviewed and passed on my feedback to the board, but had not heard about when the board plans to take action at this point. But I would imagine it would be sometime in the short term. And I think that's it as far as sort of like the administrative updates. The next item on our agenda is development updates.
Yeah, so there's no development updates from staff today. I do have on the agenda the informational meeting that was earlier this week about Crystal House 3, but we have already talked about that item today. We didn't have a specific representative chosen for those informational meetings. I know a few people attended, but I'm not sure if you want to have an update on that or not, but other than that, there's no update from staff today.
Yeah, I mean, if anyone attended something they want to do a quick brief out, now would be the time. Okay, hearing none. The next item is subcommittee and liaison reports. Karen, do you want to talk about that homeownership subcommittee and the emails that I think all of us got?
So hopefully, yes, you all received an email yesterday from Caitlin Jones. So if you read it, you would know that the development of recommendations is still ongoing, and they're still gathering information. And so basically the county's budget process has kind of put a little bit of a pause on this whole process. And so what we're looking at is sometime in mid-April, after the budget has been finalized, or when that whole budget period is over, for us to sort of to meet again with the understanding that all of our recommendations will be reflected, that our voice will be heard. But really right now, everything's kind of on hold.
Thank you. And I did want to just say with the budget, so the county board work session for the housing piece of the budget is on the 14th of March. And I do plan to attend to represent the commission. And I think for this year, we actually will have our housing commission meeting the week before. So we'll actually have an opportunity to discuss the budget before that work session happens, which is not typical. But I do plan when the budget, the county manager releases his draft budget, similar to last year, I'll send out my analysis of what's changed, what's being funded, what's not, and then looking at prior years, just so that everyone has a better sense of what's being proposed and what the impacts may be. Updates from any of our liaisons for CITSAC, Community Services Board, or what does HALRB stand for again?
So it's the Historic Affairs Land Review Board. Yeah, they work closely with historic preservation staff. So, for example, they heard the Barcroft use permit renovations, items such as that. So, at our January meeting during the work plan item, we talked about reinstating some of those liaison roles, both to our commission and from our commission. So I did find that historically the Housing Commission has had a liaison to the HALRB and to CSB in addition to the SIDSAC role that Margaret's in. So those two are open. So if anyone would like to take that on, let me know.
So what does CSB stand for?
Community Services Board.
Okay, sorry, okay.
Yeah.
I'll just do two things from the last SIDSAC meeting. We had report outs from some of the programs that are automatically funded through the CDBG program, so it's not competitive. And one of those is the Moderate Income Purchase Assistance Program. And so that was useful, and I can share with Alex maybe to share however that gets shared with us. But I think that they've done now like 100 and something, and maybe Karen, you know better.
I mean, I know that I think they're at 7 or 8 loans this year, and we're only like halfway through.
Yes.
Which is great,
yes.
because in the past, we've only done a total of 7 or 8 loans for the whole year. So there is a huge uptick in MyPAP.
It is great. The thing that was most striking to me with MyPAP is that, one, most of the users of it, or recipients, or I don't know quite how to phrase it, are singles.
Yes.
And which was sort of striking to me. And that most of them are college educated and professionals, young. They're also like
young,
sort of
like born in 2000. I'm like, wow.
Yeah, well, sort of somewhere between like averaging pretty much in their 20s for the most part, sort of 35 and under for the most part, which I also found to be quite striking. So, and we already knew that, mostly it's condos, the average price is in the 300 to 350 range, even though 500 is the ceiling for the program. So it was just a little bit, I hadn't quite realized the demographics behind that program were more dramatically different than I had anticipated.
And the good thing is that we don't normally run out. We don't run out of MyPAP money. So there is money.
There's
plenty of money to fund.
There is money there. Yeah. And they had a big surge in 21, which was I think they did something like double the amount that they normally do. But it doesn't fund a lot of, because they do have to qualify for a first mortgage, because this is a second mortgage. So, that seems to be part of the problem, but, and they also have to find something that they can afford within the county, which is another problem. But anyway, that was just useful. And then there also, the county staff made a presentation of a tenant relations position, and I guess department or whatever, or program that is funded through CDBG as well, which I knew nothing about. So, and maybe nobody else does either, but this is at least an individual, Jose? Yeah. Anyway, who works with a lot of the large apartment complexes and such that we have CAFs at, and that are some of our market rate affordable housing units.
Is that Hector, or is that someone different?
No, it's
either
not
Hector or Jorge. I think it's Jorge.
It's Jorge. Thank you.
Yeah, Jorge Mercado.
I know it was a J.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And then lastly, the other piece that was also just came up in the course of the discussion was that they are looking at funding a small housing project out of CDBG funding, and we're going to hear more about that next month, so I'll report back as to what exactly that is. That they're really seeing a substantial uptick in the elder homeless population. And that's a very different needs homeless population. So that's just something to particularly, like, as we were discussing that I think the county staff thinking more and more about how our CAFs fit into systems for older folks, they're seeing a real huge uptick in that population. So that's it.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
Related to that, so I know we voted to approve the form-based code revision. Just wondering, does that include a recommendation to have an amendment like the Planning Commission recommended, that they actually study what are those options for subsidies for elder care?
I
mean, it didn't because no one said it, but
well, I think given that the Planning Commission already gave them that charge, I sort of feel like they're already charged to do that, but I suppose we could.
I mean, if you all want to amend what we approved before, we can do that. Katie, specifically, what was the proposal?
Just to include the amendment, like that we recommend the amendment to basically study the subsidy options for elder care. So basically matching what the Planning Commission recommended.
What did they recommend? Like what subsidy?
I'm not sure exactly.
Well, no, so that as they're considering CAFs that are now not going to be the same as they are just for rental property, but what kind of systems should we be doing to not discourage developers from doing elder care facilities and contributing or including, I mean, I think this is what you're, so, and including a possible unit or whatever on site. So figuring out how to, if we are having development of elder care facilities or whatever, considering the affordable population in that dynamic.
Who would do that?
Work. I don't know.
I believe the Commission on Aging did you guys talk about this last fall?
That was before me.
Okay. I believe they did make that recommendation, but it was made last fall. I'm not positive. I can follow up with Olivia, but I believe that feasibility study was carried out and confirmed.
Oh, okay.
Yes, but I can follow up on that. But I know that recommendation was made a while ago.
Okay.
So
in that case, what was it that the Planning Commission recommended?
I was not at the Planning Commission for that item, so I'm not actually sure. But I'm happy to connect with Olivia and find out what exactly that amendment to the motion was, or however it took place.
I mean, I'm sure what the Planning Commission recommend is probably good, but I personally don't want to, like, I'm not understanding what this is, so I'm gonna say, I just don't know.
Yeah, no, fair enough. I know it's a little late to bring this up, but yeah, okay.
Well, and
But that doesn't mean that
if they did a feasibility study, I think that's part of what we're looking for, is for them to be looking into what are the options to
subsidize.
Yes, for subsidized elder care.
That's also kind of
elder care, but I don't know.
There's a couple components to that whole thing, but I'm not an expert.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other updates from the two, like HALRB or Community Services Board?
No, we don't have any representatives right now. But if anyone wants to be in that role and start attending those meetings, I can make that introduction.
For some reason, I thought we had a Community Services Board rep, but I guess.
That was
maybe Laura.
Okay. Okay. I think one of the things that people talked about that we should do is provide a description of what those duties are so that people don't volunteer for something and then find out like, oh, you have like 30 extra meetings you have to attend now because you volunteered for this. So Alex, if I can work with you to try to define that for these, so that we can send that out to people and they can know what they're potentially getting themselves into. But thank you for adding them to the agenda. We do have a liaison from the Planning Commission. It's Tenley Peterson. She's the vice chair. So she had reached out just to, I mean, I've already spoken with her about, working together, but she'd reached out just to remind staff and us that she's here for things that we want to discuss or work on with the Planning Commission. But okay, I think that's it for our agenda. I think the meeting is adjourned. Alex, if you're able to, you can turn off the recording, but I have a question for you.
One second. I was hoping for another 10:30, 11 o'clock.